Hello everyone, I'm Lainey Lee, hosting a webinar on BioStar 2 new features today. Today, we'll look at the new features for BioStar 2.8.12 to 2.8.14. Here are the contents of today's webinar. We will review the significant new features for each version of BioStar from 2.8.12 to 2.8.14. However, since there will be a separate session on the API today, we will not deeply review new API functions in this session. Next, we will share the history of major bug fixes for each version and briefly introduce BioStar 2.8.15 and later versions released soon. As you can see, we have no Q&A session for the first session, so if you have any inquiries during the webinar, please leave your questions in the Q&A box. The first chapter is BioStar 2.8.12. BioStar 2.8.12 have few new features and modifications. If customers want to use the XStation 2 fingerprint models, please guide them to upgrade BioStar 2 version 2.8.12 or above. XStation 2 fingerprint model is divided into XS2 ODPB and XS2 OAPB according to the supported card types. The basic device specifications are the same as other XStation 2 models. However, please note that you cannot use the QR code together with the fingerprint device. You can also find additional information regarding XStation 2 fingerprint models on the Suprema Connect website. After today's webinar, please check out the video from Product Manager Michael Lee. The next chapter is BioStar 2.8.13. This version contains new features, enhancements, and bug fixes related to the BioStar 2 time and attendance system. The new main features in BioStar 2.8.13 are some improvements to the TA API and a new one, Report API. Peter will explain the details in the second session, so let's move on to the next items. Next, the TLS version for the BioStar 2 time attendance server was updated to 1.2. For your information, the TLS version of the AC server has been upgraded from the previous version. The last key feature in BioStar 2.8.13 is an enhancement for using private SSL certificates. In the previous version, when private SSL certificates using a specific passphrase were applied, there was an issue where the TA server could not operate normally, even if the certificates issued and applied correctly. The third chapter is BioStar 2.8.14. This version incorporates many new features, improvements, and bug fixes. The main items are supporting IM120 and OpenJDK and improvements of the vulnerability issues. IM120 is an input module introduced by Suprema and supports multiple inputs and multiple relays. IM120 is a multiple input extension module that can control up to 12 supervised inputs, 2 aux, 1 tamper switch, and 2 relays. Up to 31 units can be connected to a master device through an RS-485 daisy chain. It allows the use of inputs for interfacing with sensors for door contacts, and etc., and provides a simple dry contact interface for other systems. The picture on the screen is a sample of installing IM120. Currently, to use the IM120, you need a core station with version 1.5.2 as an RS-485 master device. The IM120 can be connected to alarm and emergency doors and supports offline mode so that inputs and relays can operate even when the network is disconnected. Now, let's dive into the settings for using the IM120. The how-to guide is also described in the document mentioned at the bottom of the screen. So, if you missed something, please check the IM120 article on the Suprema Tech support site after the webinar. Currently, IM120 is supported only as a slave device of Core Station, so please prepare a Core Station with the latest firmware. To use the IM120, go to BioStar 2, Device menu, search the Core Station slave device, then add it. Click IM120 to configure the input and linkage setting. Enter the name of the inputs you want to connect to the physical inputs and select the option from the supervised input register list with switch types. Set the linkage for relay 0 or relay 1 when there are input detections. Fault means cut and short is only activated when the supervised input is enabled by selecting a resistance value in the supervised input register. Let's check out the demonstration video to see how it works. According to the relay operation, please pay attention to the alarm and IM120 device operation. The setting of IM120 will be a little easier for those who have experienced setting supervised input or door through BioStar 2 in the past. If you're curious about the product concept of the IM120 or would like to watch a video of the entire step-by-step setup of the IM120, check out the input module introduction video from the Suprema sales representative Krista Kim. The video is only about 10 minutes, which will be of great help to you. Next, OpenJDK, which many customers have inquired about, is supported from BioStar 2.8.14. The OpenJDK version supported by BioStar 2 is 15, and comments related to Java has been excluded from the minimum system requirements. Customers who have difficulty installing or maintaining Oracle Java due to the security policies at the project site, please upgrade the version 2.8.14 or higher so that you can use OpenJDK. The third key improved feature of BioStar 2.8.14 are security vulnerability-related items. Log4j2 2.16.0 OpenSSL 1.1.1k jQuery 3.4.1 has been applied, and security against SQL injection has been improved. We would like to explain more about Log4j2, which many customers were concerned about through Q&A. Let's dive into the contents on the screen. Question 1. We are using Suprema BioStar version 1.93. Could you inform us if affected by our current version or not? The answer is BioStar 1.93 and old version of BioStar 1 software are based on C++ programming. There is no impact of the Log4j2 vulnerability. Question number 2. Should I delete the existing Log4j2.yml file under the BioStar 2 installed folder? Answer is, you can overwrite the Log4j2.yml patch file or replace it to the patch file from the linked article. Please search security notice regarding Log4j2 vulnerability on BioStar 2. Question number 3. I have old BioStar 2 software. Should I use the patch file and follow the guideline? The answer is BioStar 2.5 and lower version does not use Java, so it does not fail under the related vulnerability. Question number 4. Suprema fingerprint scanner driver 1 is not impacted. The answer is Suprema fingerprint scanner driver is not impacted. Question number 5. I need to update the Log4j2 version to 2.17.0 because of the security reason of our security tool. The answer is we have a patch file of BioStar 2.8.14. So please generate a ticket in the Suprema Tech Support website if you need to have a patch file based on 2.8.14. Additionally, we will support Log4j2 2.17.1 on BioStar 2.8.15 and later. The final items improved in BioStar 2.8.14 include server performance improvements. Some improvements in BioStar 2 new local API Swagger and support for 20-bit vegan format cards in BioStar 1 to BioStar 2 migration tool. So far, we have reviewed the new features for BioStar 2.8.12 to 2.8.14. From now on, we will introduce the main bug fixes. Today, we will mention only some of major bug fixes, so if you need a detailed list, please download the BioStar 2 revision note from the Suprema website and check it out. BioStar 2.8.12 had 3 major bug fixes. The third of these may occur when XStation 2 is connected to the BioStar 2 for the first time. BioStar 2.8.13 had 6 major bug fixes. Many patches related to BioStar 2 TNA have been reflected. If you have experienced issues with the time attendance related behaviors in BioStar 2 version before 2.8.12, please check the revision notes for this version. BioStar 2.8.14 incorporates many bug fixes. If you've ever run into issues with features other than time attendance, please review the revision note for this version. Highlighted number 1 and number 2 are improvements for issues when using the specific device's synchronization mode. Please review the bug fixes on this page carefully. The phenomenon that the BioStar 2 server suddenly crashes has been improved in BioStar 2.8.14, showing a different status to transferring users with fingerprint data to RF card-only models has also been improved. In addition, improvements have been made to Face Station 2 operation, synchronizing many users in all device mode, and issues where some data is not registered correctly when importing CSV file. The issues related to devices that do not support Intelligent Slave and the server matching of BioStation 2 were also improved. Before we wrap up the session, I would like to introduce the upcoming BioStar 2 versions briefly. BioStar 2.8.15 is an urgent release scheduled to be at the end of February. We plan to support version 2.17.1 about Log4j issues officially in this version. There will be also improvements to the synchronization function at the customer sites that uses the specific devices mode. If you are using user sync mode and specific devices, please consider upgrading to version 2.8.15 when released. Next, BioStar 2.8.16 will improve the access control functions. If you have announced improvements scheduled for BioStar 2.8.15 by Suprema Tech Support Team before January 15, 2022, please notice that the version has been changed. From this version, the X-Station 2 can be used as an RS for a 5 slave of core station. Additionally, a function to remove the cards in the unassigned card list of BioStar 2 will be added. This is expected to be released in April, but the schedule is not static. Lastly, BioStar 2.8.17 will improve the time attendance features. If you have announced improvements scheduled for version 2.8.16 by Suprema Tech Team before January 15, 2022, please notice that the version has been changed. The release schedule has not been fixed yet. The new feature session of the BioStar 2 server and device is now over. Peter's BioStar 2 API new feature session will begin shortly after that. If you have any questions about the BioStar 2 server and device new feature session, please leave a question in the Q&A box as shown on the screen.
Hello everyone, this is Peter from Suprema, and I'm going to begin my webinar on BioStar 2 API new features about TA API with BioStar version 2.8.13. Throughout this session, we'll be covering TA API and how to use this TA API. Firstly, we'll take a look at the TA API Swagger. Secondly, we'll be going over some of the main features of the TA API. Thirdly, we'll see how report.json API, which can be considered to be the most important feature, works. Fourthly, I'll show you some demos of report.json on Postman, and at the end, we'll have some Q&A session. The first thing first, if you want to use TA API, you'll need to check what kind of API features are available. You can check that on the TA API Swagger. Let's take a look at the Swagger together. How can you check or access your TA API? You can go ahead and use your BioStar 2 IP and TA port to access to your TA API Swagger. It seems quite similar to the way you access other BioStar 2 API Swaggers. Once you enter into your TA API Swagger, please, you might think, is this the old API for the BioStar 2 AC? TA API's appearance seems to be similar to the old API Swagger. However, please do not be confused. The feature it holds are a bit different. Yes, there are some similar or even same features as from the BioStar 2 local API, but you can see some of the new ones that you cannot find on the local API Swagger. You can find timecode, shift, schedule template, rule, schedule, holiday, leave, punch log, and report. This is how you can access to your TA API Swagger. You can go ahead and use your local host or your BioStar IP or your local IP with the TA port. Let's take a look at some of the main features of the TA API. First, let's look at login. There are two ways to log into your TA API Swagger. With /login, you can use your login ID and password to log in. However, with the /login/SSO, which means single sign-on, you must use user ID, password, and BS session ID from the AC API login response. Unlike the new local API, and just like the local API you used before, you do not need to save separate cookie or session ID for the login features. It saves the session automatically. Just notice that if you are using /login/SSO to log into your TA API, you must use the user ID, not the login ID of the user. One of the most important features of the TA API is the timecode API. There are a few different API features for timecode. You can see there are get, post, get, put, delete, many API features for the timecode. Get/paycode API retrieves the timecode information of your BioStar 2. Timecode is one of the most basic setup for the TNA and its report, as it represents the categorization of the work time information. You might want to take a good attention to the timecode features since it is used for report API for creating TNA reports. On the screen, you can see the get timecode API, request body, and also the response body, and how they are related to the timecode information you can find on your BioStar 2. You can see the timecode name value goes to the response body's timecode name, and it represents its ID and everything that's included in that timecode. Let's take a look at post timecode API. This API creates a timecode for you. As an input, you provide some required settings such as attendance management, overtime management, leave management, timecode name, and more. You can see in the input that you must put in the timecode name and also attendance management. The names can be a little different on the request body in your Swagger, overtime management, and leave management. If you only look at the input provided in the Swagger, it can be very difficult to understand what each value indicates. However, if you open your BioStar 2 TNA and compare one by one, you can easily understand what each value indicates. It is very configurable once you open both BioStar 2 web app and also the Swagger to work on your API features as you check with the same functions in BioStar 2. Again, it is configurable for you. The TA API Swagger does not only provide timecode APIs, but also many other APIs for many features. The TA API Swagger provides the API features for timecode, shift, schedule templates, rule, and more, as you can see on the screen. And I am planning to create online articles that will guide the users to utilize this TA API for their integration with BioStar 2. The third part of the TA API webinar will be about the report API. With the report JSON API, you'll be able to create different types of TNA reports as you create on your BioStar 2. As I explained in the previous slide, there are 5 big types of reports that can be made by BioStar 2 TNA. They are daily report, edit history report, leave report, exception report, and individual report. And out of those 5 big types of reports, there can be a few subcategories of the reports. For example, individual report can be subcategorized into individual summary report and individual detail report. And for the leave report, there must be a certain information provided, and this information is the timecode information. You must indicate which timecode you are going to use for the leave report you're going to make. And this is what you will see in your Swagger. There is only one report API, and it is the post/report.json API. With this API, you can retrieve the report you'd like to see. Again, please note that this API does not save any Excel files for you, and as it does on your BioStar 2. You can see on its data model for the request body, you can see the columns that you can choose from to retrieve the information to the columns. You can have your end date, the group ID of the users that you're going to have the report on, and you can set the limit, which means the number of results that you will see in your response. And you can also set your report type out of those 5 big categories. And you can also have the start date of the report and the user ID list, which means the list of the users that you're going to have the report from. And first thing, this is the daily report. You can see on your screen. I set my limit value as 50. It means that I'm going to retrieve about 50 results in my report. And here is the start date time. I'm going to start the report from 2021, January 3rd, and the end date of the report will be the 2022, February 6th. And I'm going to have my user with user ID 1 in my report, and I did not choose any group ID. And most importantly, there is the report type, and I set it as report underbar daily, and this is going to be the daily report. And if you execute that API, you'll be able to see the message up on the top. It was successfully processed, and you can see the user ID 1 with the username and also the daily report of the user starting from the start date and all the way to the end date. Let's move on to the edit history report. I put the same value for the limit 50, and here report type I put it as report underbar edit underbar history. The same date for the start date time, same date for the end date time, and I put the user list with user ID number 1 only, and I am not going to sort the columns. And here it is on the right side. You can see the response body, and it was successfully processed, and it shows that the user ID is number 1, start date and username, and its report information. Let's move on to the leave report. And again, as I said, leave report requires the timecode value, and this timecode value goes into its filter in the request body. Timecode value is also timecode ID is also called as paycode ID, and report type report underbar leave, and report underbar filter type I put it as individual filter summary, and as a result it shows. But here I put about 5 users in my user list, so it brought the information of the user who has the leave information within the time period provided in the request body. You can see here the user ID is 20201201 as I put in my request body. And next is going to be exception report. Again, the API call is the same for all of them, but you just have to change the value input for the report type. Here for the exception report, I put report underbar exception, start and date time, and user ID list. And on the right side, you can find my exception report response here with the date, username, user ID, and with the shift information, overtime rule shift, in time, out time, check-in time, check-out time of the user on that date. And you can see the exception, that person was late in for that day. And lastly, let's take a look at individual reports. Report type, report underbar individual. And there is also the report filter type value in the request body and the user ID list. And on the right side, you can see the information that was brought from the individual report of your BioStar 2. Now, when there is no information on certain date, you can only see on certain person, you can see that the values are 0, the time values are all zeros. And when there is information for the person, you can see on the second response on user ID 20201201, can see the shift information, user group name, also in time and leave, out time, also other values. There are a few things that you must know before you actually utilize your TA API. As I said before, report JSON API does not export any documents. It does not save any documents for you. It shows the report in the response body. And you can use the same API for report JSON API. The API name, API call is the same for all different types of reports, but you just have to use different values for the request body. And lastly, for the leave report, you must put in your pay code or timecode ID in its filter parameter. If you do not put anything there, you will not be able to see any response in your leave report. And let's take a look at some demos that I have provided for you. Okay, you can see my screen. This is the TA API Swagger. It looks just like the old local API Swagger. And in the login information, login API, you can see those two logging in options, /login and /login/SSO. Let's use Postman. This is the login API for TA. You just have to put in your user ID and password. Go ahead and send. And now you're logged in. Let's take a look at report JSON, daily report. Here I'm going to put my limit as 50 and start date, end date, and I'm going to have my report on two users, user with user ID 1 and 2. And this is going to be report daily report. Let's send. And the process was successfully done. And you can see the daily report of the administrator with user ID 1. And this user belongs to shift 1. And this administrator was checked in at 8 a.m. and checked out at 17 hour, which is 5 p.m. You can also check the user ID number 2, name Sharon, shift 1, and Sharon did not come into work on 2022, January 1st. There is no in-time, out-time value. And in the exception, you can see that this person was absent. You can also see that on your BioStar 2. Let's go to January 1st. Administrator walked in at 8 a.m. and walked out at 5 p.m. And Sharon did not come into work. Exception indicates this person was absent that day. Let's move on to leave report. I put my limit as 50 and start date and date. And this is going to be report under bar leave. And the users are going to be 1 and 2, administrator and Sharon. And I put my filter as 3. And before that, let's see how we can get the leave, the timecode information. You can use get timecode. There is no input. You can search for all the timecode here. Okay, timecode ID number 1, regular timecode. Timecode ID number 2, on time, overtime code. 3, leave worked. 4, leave not worked. So for the leave report, we have to use either ID number 3 or 4. And I used 3, which is leave worked. So this is going to be the report of the person leaving from the work, and the company counts that person as worked on that day. Let's see. Successful for the administrator on January 4th. User ID number 1, shift 1. This administrator had leave worked on that schedule. Leave period. This administrator left the work at 8 a.m. And 5 p.m. This is counted as worked in the schedule. And also Sharon is counted as worked when she left the work on February 2nd. If you'd like to see unworked leave, you can just change the time code information here, and you can see leave not worked on January 5th. Administrator left the work and it was not counted as worked schedule. Lastly, let's see individual report. The report type is going to be a report underbar individual, and you can set your ID values for the users. And let's check. This is going to be the individual report on January 3rd. You can see the administrator did not come into work, absence, and for Sharon, also did not come into work that day, absence. If you'd like to see January 1st, when administrator actually worked, you can see here that on January 1st, user ID 1, administrator came into work at 8 a.m. and went out at 5 p.m. And on the 2nd of January, this administrator was absent. And just like that, you can use your TA API Swagger features. Okay, let's move on. This is what we covered just now. For the time being very short on us, we can have the Q&A on our chatting room. If you have any questions, please ask. Please raise your hand and ask your question in our chatting room in the Zoom.
Yes, Kate, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
So I'd like to thank you for this presentation and for the information shared across the API. I have a question that I asked in the Q&A and I just received that you will be checking and reply back after the webinar session. However, a quick overview about the API with Postman. I downloaded the file of software of the Postman and I tried to use the API. And I see it's quite helpful to be able to be utilized by other middlewares. Am I right?
Yes.
And my question goes, if there are any other middlewares that can be readily integrated with such an API and receive the responses to be interpreted in a format that is customized upon our needs, as I see other folks asking about the integration of such data from BioStar 2 towards our software.
I can only recommend for you to use Postman to see if your API call and your request body actually works and it brings the appropriate response for you or not. For the integration, yes, you can use Postman to see if your request body that you have made for the response you want to retrieve, if that works or not. Please check that on Postman. Does that answer your question? I'm not able to understand well because of the voice quality.
Yeah, you have answered. Thank you so much.
And thank you for attending the webinar. And this will be it for this webinar for BioStar 2.8.13. Thank you for attending.